This is 5 in 10 from Skywatch TV, 5 things you need to know for Thursday, June 6th, 2024. I'm Derek Gilbert. Item number 5 today, Israel strikes Syria. Another airstrike into Syria by the Israeli Air Force, this time the northern city of Aleppo. This took place in the overnight hours from Monday into Tuesday. Reportedly killed an Iranian military advisor, members of an Iranian militia group, and civilians as well. Hours after the attack, the Iranian state media confirmed the death of an officer in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. It's essentially the Praetorian Guard that props up the theocracy running the nation of Iran. The anti-Assad war monitor, Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, reported that 16 members of pro-Iran groups were killed in the attack. The main strike reportedly a copper smelting plant and a weapons warehouse in the countryside near the city of Aleppo. The Syrian Observatory of Human Rights has documented 44 Israeli attacks on Syria so far this year. Syrian public kind of upset that the Russian military is not doing more to try to stop the Israeli attacks in Syria. As Russia has an air base in northwestern Syria, there seems to be a sort of a handshake deal between Jerusalem and Moscow to kind of leave each other alone. As long as those airstrikes don't come from Syrian airspace, Israel generally launches its attacks into Syria from Lebanese airspace. Item number 4, our divided world. Speaking of Russia, it may have a new ally in Turkey. Turkey reportedly wanting to join BRICS. That's the economic bloc: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, who's on a visit to China right now, made this statement. Says he plans to visit the group when they meet in the western Russian city of Nizhny Novgorod. That's a lead up to the official summit meeting in October. New members to BRICS, by the way. BRICS has expanded as of January 1st. It now includes Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. Argentina was also invited. They've decided to delay membership. But Turkey joining BRICS would be a NATO member joining this coalition with Brazil, with Russia and China and Iran. Again, it's just showing how the world is bifurcating into the Western world led by NATO, the United States, and the BRICS nations, which between Russia, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, a big proportion of the world's natural resources, especially petrochemical. Topic number 3, the changing narrative. This is one of those stories that gets channels canceled, so you just have to follow along and understand what I'm talking about. You'll get it. Researchers from the Netherlands, analyzing data from 47 Western countries, big study, discovered there'd been more than 3 million excess deaths since 2020, with the trend continuing despite the rollout of containment measures for the pandemic. In other words, despite what we were told would protect us from the disease, prevent the spread of the disease, mitigate the risk of death from the disease, the excess deaths have continued. Researchers said the unprecedented figures raised serious concerns, called on governments to investigate the underlying causes. The study found that across Europe, US, and Australia, there'd been more than 1 million excess deaths in 2020 at the height of the pandemic, but then about 1.2 million in 2021 and 800,000 more in 2022 after containment measures were implemented. What could that be? German researchers also point out the onset of excess mortality in early 2021 in Germany coincided with the rollout of containment measures. Now, proximity does not equal causality, but it does hint that that might be the reason. It's interesting that this is coming from the mainstream media. This is reported by The Telegraph in the UK, not a right-wing conspiracy theory website. The narrative is changing. Meanwhile, on Monday of this week, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who headed up the U.S. response to the pandemic, testified before the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic. He admitted during his testimony that major parts of his response, the science trademark, was not in fact backed by science. Science distinguished from the science trademark. Actual science, in particular, masking, especially masking children, and social distancing, staying at least 6 feet apart, not backed by any real research. He was basically just spitballing. He admitted he didn't know where the 6-foot distance came from and couldn't point to any research that said that that was a magic distance that beyond which viruses could not travel. In fact, there's research showing that viruses, when people sneeze or cough, do travel a lot farther than that, but I digress. Anyway, so he was spitballing this, and yet in 2021, when he was on Meet the Press, NBC's Chuck Todd was told by Dr. Fauci that criticizing Dr. Fauci was, quote, really attacking not only Dr. Anthony Fauci, you are attacking science, end quote. No, not science, but the science, trademark. What they were telling us was science was not, in fact, science. Also, new data from the National Institutes of Health reveal that the agency, the NIH, and its scientists collected $710 million in royalties during the pandemic from late 2021 through 2023. Nice work if you can get it. $710 million. These are payments made by private companies like pharmaceuticals to license medical innovations from government scientists. Almost all of that $710 million, $690 million of it went to the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Oh, that's the agency that was headed up by Dr. Anthony Fauci. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, I am reliably informed. Topic number 2, erasing the border. It is essentially gone. You remember when we were letting illegals into the country and giving them court dates and then just sort of hoping that they would show up for the court date 3 years in the future? We've now eliminated that process now. We're just letting them go, period. According to new figures reported by the New York Post, since 2022, more than 350,000 asylum cases have been closed by the U.S. government with no adjudication, one way or the other. They're just letting them go, letting them stay in the country with no official status. Yeah, you're not supposed to be here, but we're not going to deport you or anything. You're not legal either. You're just sort of in limbo. This basically allows them to indefinitely roam around the United States without fear of deportation, allowing them to slip through the cracks. Simply put, the government is just letting illegals into the country. Okay, unless they show up on some sort of watch list and get caught, no problem. And hey, here's the beauty part. Republicans can't claim that illegals are voting if they're not illegal anymore. 4D chess. Now, having said that, with Democrat voters in major cities like Chicago getting really upset at having to compete with new arrivals for government resources, the Biden administration announced that the president was signing an executive order that happened earlier this week to allow him to shut down the southern border should crossings surge, which they almost certainly will, as people in Central and South America kind of read what's happening politically here, realize that Donald Trump's probably going to become the president again and will really shut down the border. So they're going to try to get across between now and then. But again, if the government's just going to let them go, what's the point of even having a border? Coming up, speaking of government efficiency, billion-dollar electric vehicle charging stations. If you can do math, it's $1 billion per. I'll explain next on 5 and 10.
God's creation is full of mysteries. What were the giants in the Scripture? Did dinosaurs roam the earth in the days of Noah? Are we alone in the universe? Join speakers Derek Gilbert, Rudy Landa, Michael Hoggart, Greg Patton, Mac Dominic, Josh Davis, and Micah Van Huss to explore the topics your Sunday school teacher didn't talk about at the Mysteries of the Bible Verse event in Cincinnati, Ohio, June 7th and 8th.
Item number 1 today, these EV charging stations must be made of solid gold. They must, because they're costing about $1 billion a piece. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was on Face the Nation, CBS Sunday morning show last weekend, where he faced Anchor Margaret Brennan, who essentially laughed in his face as Secretary Buttigieg tried to explain why the government allocated $7.5 billion, part of our stimulus plan during the COVID breakdown, $7.5 billion to build 500,000 EV charging stations around the country. Now, here we are 3 years later, and we have built 7 or 8. He's not really sure, 7 or 8. It's one or the other. So we'll just split the difference, $7.5 billion, 7.5 charging stations, $1 billion a piece. Brennan was kind of incredulous, like, what are you guys doing? And he said, well, we made a start on this to try to get, said, no, look, you said 500,000. In 3 years, you've built 7 or 8. What's going on here? And he basically concocted a word salad to try to explain it. But again, when you've lost CBS News and they are literally laughing at you, you know, Democrat, that you have really lost the plot. The goal, again, 500,000 of these by the year 2030. So far, 2024, only 7 or 8. At this rate, we might have 15 by then. And again, for this price, they'd better be made of solid gold. This week on Skywatch TV, we're talking about Whispering Ponies Ranch and why we do what we do to work with children in the foster care system and how you can change the life of a child who is at much greater risk than most for a really bad life outcome. Nita Horn, CEO of Whispering Ponies Ranch, joins us on the main program this week. You can watch it right now, skywatchtv.com. You'll find all of our content always there. So if ever the big video sharing website decides to cancel us again, you'll find all of our content there. You'll also find it at our Skywatch TV channel on Roku or Apple TV. It's broadcast over the air on our partner Christian networks. You can find the schedule for a network channel, time, date near you. It's posted at skywatchtv.com/channels. On Rumble, rumble.com/skywatchtv. YouTube, the main program is back on YouTube now at Skywatch Television. But better yet, make sure we never get canceled by downloading our free mobile app to your smartphone or tablet. That way, if we do get kicked off the interwebs, you'll have it because this bypasses the gatekeepers of big tech. It's available for iOS, Android, and Amazon Kindle Fire phones and tablets. We have links to their app stores at our website, skywatchtv.com/app. Thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert. This is 5 in 10 from Skywatch TV.